Probably one of the most important things you can do in your freelance videography business is set up contracts that not only protect you, but your customer. That's why in this video, I'm going to be going over the 5 lines that I like to add inside my contracts. Now, this isn't legal advice, and I always recommend to consult your own attorney for your own business. But let's take a look at a few of the lines that I add into my contracts. The first one is the services line. So right now you're looking at one of my contracts, and under services provided, I like to add, when it comes to videography, the videography date. So whether this is a wedding, a live event, usually I put in videography session on X date during these times at this location. So you want to be very specific when and where it is, and then what equipment you're providing. So whether it's a 1 camera shoot, 2 camera shoot, maybe you're bringing audio, lighting, you want to list that as well. If you're providing drone services, you can put that in there. And then when it comes to editing, are you editing the video? What type of video are you creating? Is it like a 30-second video, 60-second video? Is it like a wedding film? Is it like 5 minutes long? You want to put in as much detail as you can in this section as well. And then underneath that, I usually put in the deadline. So this is one of the most important notes. It's important to establish a deadline with your client when they're expecting to receive the deliverable. So in this case, you can see that in this template, I'm promising a first draft within 3 weeks after the videography session. So you can put whatever works for you in there. And then underneath that, how many revisions the client may have. So in this case, maybe 3. I recommend maybe 2 or 3. It really depends on the project. And then lastly, how are the deliverables being sent? Is it like a digital Dropbox link? Are you providing it on a flash drive? Are you uploading it for the client to their social media channels? You want to list that in here as well. So that's services, but next let's talk about compensation, because this is the second, probably most important thing to add into your contracts. So under compensation, I usually put in contractor will charge a client a flat rate of X dollars for the services. If you charge an hourly rate, you can change this to hourly rate, day rate, whatever wage that you want to put in here, you can change the wording of this. Then underneath this line, I'll add a line that talks about payment terms. So you can see here the total compensation will be due 30 days after signing this agreement. An invoice will be sent by the contractor in an email. So it clearly lists when the payment is due, so the client understands when to pay you and how to be paid. They're going to receive an invoice in their email. Now you can break this apart. You can take a deposit. You can break it into payment plans. This is really up to you how you want to get paid. For example, sometimes for weddings, I'll break it apart where I'll have 50% deposit within 30 days after signing the agreement, and that reserves the wedding date. And then usually a week before the wedding, which could be like a year later after signing this agreement, is typically due a week before the wedding. So you can break it apart 50% down, 50% later, or whatever payment works best for you and your project. A few other lines that I include inside the compensation section is a refund or guarantee line. Typically, I'll add this line regardless. If the contractor fails to provide the services outlined in this agreement, the client will be refunded the total compensation. This basically says if for whatever reason I fail at providing the services, they get refunded. Or if you don't want to offer a refund, you can change this line to say, all sales are final, no refunds. But typically, I like to add a refund just in case something happens. In addition to this, say if you work in live events or you're trying to book on a certain day, you can add maybe a rain date day as well into this line, or a rescheduling fee. It really depends on your own project. And then lastly, say if you want to outsource this work for the services to other employees and independent contractors, I will usually add a line that says that the services can be performed by other employees and independent contractors. I like just adding this just to be upfront with the customer because, they might think that you are doing all the work, but at the end of the day, you're a business, and if you want to outsource your services, you can do that. The next line is creative release. So I recommend adding this for a lot of videography gigs, specifically weddings and live events. So this basically says, if we read this here, the contractor will act in the best interest of the client's events and preservation of the contractor's creative vision. In doing so, the contractor will try its best to capture the moments as they transpire, but cannot guarantee specific shots or comprehensive coverage. What this line basically does, it protects you just in case if something happens and you don't get it. Because in live events and weddings specifically, a lot of things will happen. And if you're a one-person team, there's not 100% chance that you'll get everything that the client's looking for. So this line just protects you just in case the client's like, hey, did you get this? And if they're upset about you not getting it, you can always reference this line in the contract saying that hey, I'll do my best, but I can't guarantee 100% everything that you're asking for. The next line is force majeure. So there's a few lines I'll add in here. If I'm working with drones specifically, I'll add kind of like a section talking about drone and weather. Basically says weather will influence the final outcomes. Client also understands several factors may result in drone videography services not performed, such as weather, local, state, federal, and international regulations. So it's important to add this line because I feel like with drone work specifically, there's a lot of variables at play, whether it's weather or different laws and regulations. You can add additional details as well, say if you want to provide a rain date or some type of rescheduling framework that you can follow just in case you can't fly the drone for whatever reason. But that is something to consider when creating your contracts. Now, another thing I add in force majeure is just general things. Say if acts of God happen, things completely outside of your control that occur, what happens during those situations? So for example, in the videography world, I'll add in things such as memory card failures, computer failures, theft, broken equipment, equipment malfunction. If any of these things happen, the client will be refunded the full compensation. So this basically says if anything outside of the client's control or contractor's control arise that hinder the completion of services, the client will get refunded. It's important to have this line regardless because you just want to have it just in case. Not saying this will happen, but it just protects both of you just in case something occurs. Force majeure was enacted a lot during the pandemic because something happened worldwide that caused a lot of businesses to back out of the contracts that they agreed to because of the economic conditions during that time frame. So really, it can be anything that occurs in the world, whether it's a world event or on a local level, like memory card failures. Anything that is outside of your control. The last section I usually add into my videography contracts is raw media and deliverables. This is an important section to add, especially if you're a freelance videographer. You want to clearly state how long do you keep the raw files for. In this contract specifically, I say that I keep the files for 30 days after the final deliverable has been sent, and that it's the client's responsibility to download and archive final deliverables upon receipt. The contractor will not be held responsible for any lost or deleted media or deliverables. So this prevents the client from coming back several years later saying, hey, do you still have that footage? Oh, you don't? Well, that's an issue, but we agreed to these terms. You can always bring this back up. Now, in reality, I do actually keep everything for as long as I can. I have several external hard drives, but this just protects me just in case I really truly don't have something. And then the last line in here is who owns the files. So the final deliverables will remain in ownership to the client or the contractor. Really depends on the client and the project you're working with. And then lastly, a line that says whether the contractor may use the final deliverables in their portfolio of work, or if they may publish it on their website or social media channels. So those are the main lines that I like to add in my contract. So now that I have this put together, how do I actually go about sending this to the client to sign? I want to send it to them so they can read it, sign it, date it, and then I get it and I sign it and date it so it's legally binding. What I like to use for this is Adobe Acrobat. So I'm going to quickly show you how I set this up inside Acrobat. So I usually create my templates inside Microsoft Word, and what I'll typically do is just save this as a PDF by going up to File, Save As. And then here I'll just change it to PDF from the dropdown, and then click Export. Next, I'm going to open Adobe Acrobat. And next, what I'm going to do is open the PDF inside Adobe Acrobat. So I'm going to go to my Finder, go to my PDF, right click, and just go to open with Adobe Acrobat. This will open up in Acrobat. And obviously, if this is a completed contract, it will have the listed names of everything, but this is just a blank template for now. I just want to show you how to actually add the fields at the very bottom so that you can send it to clients so they can sign it, date it, and that you can sign it and date it. So say if this is a completed contract, how I would set this up is go to Fill and Sign at the left. And at the top left, you'll notice that you have Request e-signature. So you can click on this and this box will appear. This is where you can add in the client's email and name, and you can set the signing order. So for example, I'm going to add in my email address and then my name. We'll pretend I'm the client. And then you can add your email and name. So you can click this plus button, add recipient, or add yourself. So in this case, I'm going to add myself. And this basically uses your Adobe ID. So, my Adobe ID is john@johnthevideoguy.com with my name. You can also check this box, which I like to do at the top left, to recipients must sign in order. This makes the client sign first, and then you get the final sign off, and then it's official. And then once you have that set, you can go to prepare document. So at the top left, what you can do is click on the first recipient and then click on the box that you want them to sign in. So in this case, Adobe Acrobat automatically recognizes the fields where people can fill and sign in information. So the client, I want them to sign on this line. So I'm going to click here, and then over here, I'm going to select date. So I'm going to select the date and then click on this box here. This is where they'll date it. And next for the contractor signature, I can click on the contractor at the top left, click on e-signature here, and then click on the contractor signature line. And then lastly, click on date and then click on the date over here. And that adds in the fields for the different parties to sign. Now I can click review and send at the bottom left. And this essentially is the email that the client will receive. So you can type in a custom message if you'd like. And then at the right, you can set a reminder if you want them to be reminded. You can also turn it off if you don't want to remind them. And lastly, you'll just click send, and this will send it off to the client to sign. So if we click send, I'll show you kind of what it looks like on the client side so they can see it. It's important to realize the client doesn't need Adobe Acrobat specifically to sign their documents. You can sign the documents without being an Adobe customer. So this is what it looks like on the client side of things. It'll say signature requested on the name of the document. You can click on it. This is what the client sees. They can click review and sign. This will prompt them to sign the document. So you can click continue at the bottom left. They can read it. They can scroll through it, make sure everything looks correct. And then once they're ready to sign, they can click on this option here. They can either type, draw, use an image. I'm going to simply click apply. And then from the date, you can select the date picker, choose today's date, and then click submit at the bottom. And once that's done, it's complete. And then on your side, you'll receive this email here saying it's your turn to sign. So you can click on this button here to sign it. And you can click at the bottom right arrow to go to the fields. You can click to sign, click on the date, and then click submit. And now you have a finished document. You can also download a copy here. And also the client will receive a copy in their email. So going back to the client email, if we go over here, you can see it sent them the signed document by both parties. So they have it for their records as well. So that's how I go about setting up my contracts with important lines and sending them to my clients. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.